Hey kids, welcome to the Far Out Podcast. It's December, so you know what that means. It's Avatar season. Yes, kids, at the time of this recording, we are now just days away from Avatar 3, Avatar Fire and Ash, being released in theaters. And to mark the return of this great franchise, I decided to do a rewatch of the first two Avatar films and also some behind the scenes stuff as well. And this episode of the podcast will be recorded over the course of several days. After I get done watching Avatar 1, I will come back and I will record a segment talking about that movie. The same with Avatar 2 and the same with Avatar 3 as well. And so by the time you are listening to this, yes, you, the faithful listener, by the time you are hearing this, I will have seen Avatar 3 and you can listen to my comments on that movie as well. But for this segment, for this first segment, I just got done rewatching Avatar 1 and I want to share my thoughts on that movie. But briefly, I want to just give kind of my overview of the whole franchise of Avatar as well. And I'll start off by saying this. I love this franchise. I think this thing is amazing. And I'm not saying that they're the same one to one. However, I think that the Avatar franchise is like a modern version of the Star Wars franchise in the sense that the same way Star Wars pushed forward not only technology, but also storytelling and took audiences by storm, I think the Avatar franchise is doing the same thing. Again, from a technological perspective, from a storytelling perspective, and the overall relevance it's having on audiences, I think that they are following similar beats. Because again, you look at Star Wars, that franchise began in the 70s, yet we are still talking about those movies and still making those movies to this day, going on 50 years now of the franchise. Avatar is not quite 20 years old, but it's going to get there because that first movie came out in 2009, which is crazy to think about. That movie is old, air quotes old, by today's standards. But that franchise is going on 20 years now, getting close to that. Yet we still talk about it, and there are still movies being made. And now, despite there being such a large gap between Avatar 1 and 2, with Avatar 1 being released in '09 and Avatar 2 being released in 2022, the franchise appears to have a steady trajectory going forward, with there being the plans for numerous sequels, and they're going to be released, I think, in 3-year increments. And so, you had Avatar 2 in 2022, you have Avatar 3 in 25, and then you're going to get Avatar 4 in 28, and so on and so forth. And who knows how many of these movies there will be. They keep promising and threatening us with more chapters. So eventually we're going to get Avatar, 3 through 12, but I'll be there for every installment. I really will be, because I think that this franchise is amazing. And look, I think there's a lot of comparisons that people draw to the Avatar franchise when it comes to movies like Dances with Wolves, because, Avatar, while it pushed forward technology, some people might argue it's more derivative in terms of storytelling progression. And to be fair, that's true to a degree, because you look at its most, easy comparison when it comes to movies, and people love to talk about 1990s Dance with Wolves, and in that movie, made by Kevin Costner, he plays a lieutenant in the Civil War who, belongs to America, yet he interacts with a Sioux tribe, and that, makes him change ideologies and, question his morals and his alignments and so on and so forth. And, while he as a character was initially just driven by, westward expansion and, being with his people and defending his honor and all that stuff, he ends up realizing that, the Sioux tribe are not just a group of people that, are in the way. They're not just there just to be conquered and to be exploited. He realizes that they have their own cultures, that they matter, that they also have relevance as well. And that ends up developing into a really impactful story. And the same is absolutely true with Avatar as well, that 2009 film, except you're not talking about just two different ideologies of humans. You're talking about literally two different ideologies of species, because the main protagonist, his name is Jake Sully, played by Sam Worthington. He's a human, and in the story of Avatar, he interacts with an alien species known as the Na'vi, one of the chief characters of of that people is played by Zoe Saldana. She plays Natiri, and as Jake Sully, a human, interacts with these aliens, the Navi, he realizes that they themselves are important and they have their own culture and relevance, and that they are not meant to be conquered and exploited, that they also should be defended. And it's talking about, you know, it's casting a light on how we as humans love to just take and take and take. We're, driven by greed and excess. And that has to be curtailed because, if we continue to just dive into, you know, everything driven by profits, we're going to end up destroying all that's in front of us from a cultural perspective, and people's lives are going to be affected as well. I mean, it's if you don't stop that steamroller, people are going to suffer. And so, like, Avatar has a lot to say as well, and it's really unique too in the sense that, like, it presents the humans as the bad guys, and a shocking shocker that shocks. But the majority of people, if not all the people who watch the Avatar movies, are humans, And so for us to look at these movies and to see our own representation on screen as being the bad guys, we end up rooting for the aliens at the end of the day. That's pretty wild, And so Avatar is able to tell this really intricate story that's also, deep and emotional and revolves around the importance of protecting people. And inside that, there's also the importance of protecting family and sticking together and defending what's right, and pursuing honor and truth, and it's really really remarkable. And despite Avatar being this big bombastic sci-fi spectacle, these movies are family films. Again, they deal with family as a core plot element as well, but also you could literally watch these movies as a family. It doesn't matter if you're 17 or 77. Anyone can enjoy the Avatar movies, hence why they became so popular. At the time of its release, Avatar in 2009 was literally the biggest film to ever be released in the history of cinema. It grossed somewhere over $2 billion, and I believe now Avengers Endgame is technically the biggest movie ever. I think that movie has made more at the box office globally, somewhere over 2 billion as well. But like, Avatar and Endgame are constantly duking it out for which one could be the biggest. But like, again, think about that just for a second though. One movie made over $2 billion worldwide. That's not just people going to, that's not like just a large group of people going to see it. That's people going to see it over and over and over again. And I can attest to that because the sequel, Avatar 2, The Way of Water, that also made over $2 billion. And I saw that movie 4 times in theaters. So if I was, a teenager or a young adult when Avatar came out in 2009, I would have gone two, three, four, 5 times easily, because I think the film is just that good. And I can attest to the film being that good because I just rewatched Avatar 1, and I can confidently say this movie is just amazing. Again, from a technical perspective, the way that motion capture is, well, captured, and put onto screen, the way that they're able to perfectly utilize people's performances and digitize them and put them into a digital environment without losing any of the nuances, any of the details. It's it's as if it's as if these actors are able to wear their costumes. They're able to act inside their costumes without actually having to put them on. Like, it's just nuts. If you don't know how these movies are freaking made, you have to do some research on these things because the Avatar movies are an absolute triumph when it comes to technology. Again, building digital worlds around these characters, around these actors, and having it all feel real and tangible and impactful. It's freaking nuts. And also, too, not for nothing, but like, James Cameron just knows how to freaking do this thing because he makes huge movies, both in terms of budget, length, execution, you name it. I mean, no, nothing is small when it comes to him. And like, Avatar is, close to 3 hours long, yet you don't feel that runtime. And from the 10-minute mark, you're in. I mean, they give you everything you need to know. They give you the human element, the alien element. They give you what Jake wants, what the people of Earth and humanity wants overall. They give you the importance of the Navi and how they relate to the planet of Pandora as well. I mean, from 10 minutes in, you are just you're locked in. They give you all the beats that you need. Every character has their own driving force. You see the opposition as well. You are in from a story perspective. Boom, you have the rest of the runtime to go on this incredible adventure, and it truly is an incredible adventure. I mean, the look of Pandora alone, everything is fluorescent and beautiful and colorful and bright. It feels really inviting. It feels like you can reach out and touch it, and everything you see, you almost want it to be like preserved. Like you understand that like this is special. This is meant to be special, and like in the same way that we interact with say our own natural parks, on Earth and whatnot, it's the same way that the Navi interact with their environment around them, except they have even more of a relevance when it comes to nature and protecting, the natural order of things. And so when you see the humans encroach on that, when you see the humans literally bulldoze trees and acres of forest to get after the Earth, or excuse me, the planet's natural resources, you feel like stuff is being tarnished. You feel like the humans are out of place, and everything we're encountering as an audience is just being cast aside literally for profit. And so it has that to say about it too, about how we as humans are driven by greed and excess, and if that's left unchecked, that can destroy ecosystems and civilizations and ultimately end up in the result of you know, the death of the innocents, and stuff like that. And so for us as the audience to be rooting for the aliens, to be rooting for a literally alien world is pretty remarkable. And that's again just that's a tribute to the great storytelling, because they don't just drop you into this thing. I mean, you see everything from learning about the flora, the fauna, the creatures, learning about their culture, about how they value, a sense of togetherness and being a warrior and, living in harmony. I mean, this movie takes its time to show you everything because they want you to have that emotional root to everything. And so when you see it get disrupted, it has that much more of an impact. And I gotta be honest, like I've seen this movie many times, but like I feel it, like, when you see Jake learn how to shoot a bow and when you see him learn how to ride a flying dragon thing, and, it's great, and then when you see, again, the humans show up and they wreck shop, like, you feel that loss as well, and also, like, while this is a sci-fi fantasy-ish movie, the tangibility of it from a human perspective is really cool as well too, because, like, everything you see looks futuristic yet also realistic at the same time. Like the guns, you're like, yep, that's clearly a gun from the future. But I think in like 10 to 15 years, we could have that model. Same with their aircraft, same with their labs and their computers, and everything is touchscreen and all that stuff. Like again, it feels very futuristic, but also like like what if we could get there, and so they really go out of their way in terms of design and philosophy to make it all feel like it could actually exist, where the really only fantastical element is the alien aspect. Yet again, they don't waste any time with that either too, where they make that feel just as real as well. And yeah, this movie's freaking great. I think the action is incredible. I think the dialogue is great. It really makes you think. Again, you don't feel its runtime. The movie does not overstay its welcome. Every scene has a purpose. You don't want it to end. You get sucked in from, as I said, 10 minutes in, you are locked in. You're going on this grand adventure, seeing everything. And like you would think that at some point you're like, oh my gosh, like we're still learning about, the importance of the animals, like boring, get to the action. No, it's like it's all worth it. It makes everything better. You enjoy the quiet moments just as much as you enjoy the big bombastic things as well. And then, it brings in this element of spirituality as well, to where it's like everything on the planet is like alive and connected. And so like when the action does happen, it talks about how like, when the fire spreads, it hurts everything. We all feel that. We all feel the trees burning and everything falling apart. And it's like, how do you go on then with those scars? Like how do you not just revel in revenge? And it's like this movie takes its time, and like it also, again, as I mentioned, It talks about spirituality, about how, you know, how you have to value life beyond just yourself. You have to value the greater meaning to things, and so on and so forth. And then also too, like Jake Sully, just from a story perspective, like he as a human is a former Marine, but he's also a paraplegic, and so he's handicapped from the waist down. He can't walk. He utilizes a wheelchair. Yet when he gets integrated into his avatar body, he gets a new set of legs that aren't his own. And so for him to regain that sense of mobility, and to have it be presented again via an alien body in an alien world, he himself is interacting with it on a deeper level than just someone who is taking an avatar for a test drive. And you see throughout the movie that Jake, you know, when he's in the avatar body, he feels alive and reborn and energized in a way that he hasn't felt for a long, long time. And then when he gets sucked out of the avatar body and he goes back into his human body and he gets out of the pod, he feels this sense of detachment. He feels this sense of like shame and like longing because he looks back at his literal own human body and it's literally half of what he had just previously felt. He feels more at home in the avatar body than he does in his human body as the movie progresses. And again, as he progresses deeper into the world of Pandora and of Avatar, we as the audience do as well. And I just think that the movie is just incredible that it can be that deep and that moving and that emotional and that every beat lands. And all the actors I think just do an incredible job with their respective characters. And again, everything looks amazing. It looks like $1 billion because they spent $1 billion and it made $2 billion, so like go crazy. But yeah, like Avatar is a really, really special movie, and it's a shame that it took as long as it did to get the sequels out. It was many, many years, between Avatar 1 and 2, again 2009 to 2022. But I'm thankful to be a part of the journey going forward with Avatar because again, I think that um, as James Cameron and everyone over there at Fox are going to continue to push forward the technological boundaries as well. That's going to reflect the storytelling, and I think that the reason why it took so many years between Avatar 1 and 2 was so that the technology could again further develop uh, to represent the grander scale of the future Avatar films, which again is akin to Star Wars as well, because George Lucas finished the original trilogy sometime in the 80s, and he said, I want to go back and I want to tell what happened before with the prequels, but I want to wait. I want to wait until the technology advances, hence why those own movies took decades as well. The original trilogy of Star Wars, I think, concluded in the mid '80s. And the prequel trilogy of Star Wars films concluded in the mid 2000s because he needed time for technology to evolve. And I think that James Cameron recognized that as well, that he couldn't just crank out Avatar, 2, 3 years later. He needed a lot of time. And in my opinion, these movies are worth the wait. Avatar 2 was worth the wait, but we'll talk about that movie after, you know, I rewatch it. But yeah, just from a foundational point, everything that Avatar laid in 2009, uh, again, not only changed things for its respective franchise, but also I think it changed things for technology, for movie-going audiences everywhere. And I think the film is really, really tremendous. I think it's one of the best films maybe ever made. I'm definitely open to having that conversation. But yeah, that's my thoughts about Avatar from '09 and the franchise overall. And look, I could gush about Avatar, till I'm blue in the face, pun intended. Um, but yeah, those are my thoughts right now on the first film. But I will come back and I will record my additional thoughts after I get done watching Avatar 2, and then I will also talk about some behind the scenes stuff as well. And then eventually, kids, by the time you are listening to this very episode, I will have seen Avatar 3. Maybe you will also have seen it as well. And if you have, comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Kids, welcome back to the Far Out podcast. At the time of this recording, it is now 11:50 p.m. on December 17th, just a breath before Thursday the 18th when Avatar 3, Avatar Fire and Ash begins to come into cinemas in a limited capacity, and then it will go wide in more markets and in more showtimes beginning Friday, and then it'll expand, that's when the film properly releases. It goes into full release that weekend, and so leading up to the release of that movie, I decided to do a rewatch of the Avatar franchise thus far, and I shared my thoughts on the first film, and now I'm coming back to the podcast to record this segment, having just finished Avatar 2, The Way of Water. I just finished it a few minutes ago, and by golly, does this movie still just completely satisfy on all levels, even after all these years, even after all these rewatches that I've done? This thing is just a gift that keeps on giving. If you enjoyed the first Avatar movie, you are going to love Avatar 2 because it is bigger, more impactful, higher stakes. It's literally longer too. It's wetter. It has to do with the water ecosystem of the Navi people on Pandora. I mean, this thing takes everything that you liked and appreciated about the first Avatar film and just expands it in ways that you weren't prepared for. And upon this rewatch, I realized how deeply they took the mythology and the world building, because the first Avatar movie, while I think Avatar from '09 is better of the two, in my opinion, I think that Avatar from '09 is superior. That does not diminish anything from Avatar The Way of Water. If anything, Avatar 2 excels so much in the way that it does because it is simply building on the foundation that Avatar from '09 set, where it explains the world, the people, how everything works, what the stakes are, you know, what everyone wants out of their various campaigns throughout the movie, so on and so forth. And Avatar 2 takes that and takes it to a whole nother level, takes it even deeper. And something that I forgot that this movie does so well is that it furthers the examination of the species that we follow on the planet Pandora. That's where the the movie is set on. That's the primary planet where the Na'vi live and where everything takes place. And in the first movie, Avatar '09, they set up that there are essentially three species of characters that we are going to follow. There's the natural Earth-bred humans that come from Earth and travel throughout space and land on Pandora, hoping to capture its resources and ultimately colonize the planet. Then there are the Navi, who are the natives of Pandora. They're the blue people, so on and so forth. And then you have a subdivision of both species in that you have the literal Avatar characters, and that is a combination. They come from a combination of human DNA mixed with Navi DNA, and they are synthetically grown. They are artificial organisms made by humans to interact with the Navi on a more personal level that is more hospitable to the planet Pandora, because humans, without proper gear and equipment, they can't survive on Pandora. Yet by creating these bodies, by creating these avatars, they can merge with them via consciousness. They can kind of remote control and autopilot them via some kind of mind meld technique. Well, in the first movie, spoiler for Avatar '09, excuse me, that movie ends with our chief, our principal character, who leads the human portion of the story. His name is Jake Sully, played by Sam Worthington. He himself was a natural born human, but by the end of Avatar '09, he merges completely into his avatar body, and so no longer is he just remote controlling it by connecting his consciousness. He literally melts his consciousness. He shifts it over completely from his human body into his avatar body, and so now he is no longer considered to be part of the human species. He completely switches over to become part of the Navi species, the part of the Pandoran race, But he himself is not fully blooded. He's not pure blooded. In fact, in Avatar 2, The Way of Water, they consider him and his offspring to be half-bloods because he, again, he's technically in a body that was engineered by humans with a mixture of human blood, or excuse me, human DNA and Navi DNA. And then uh, also at the end of Avatar '09, you have a secondary character from Earth named Grace, played by Sigourney Weaver. She herself gets injured at the end of Avatar '09, and she also tries to merge her consciousness completely from her original human body into her avatar body so that way she can abandon her mortal wounds and go on and continue to live in Pandora alongside Jake Sully, so on and so forth. Yet, due to her wounds, she was unable to fully transfer and she died. Like she couldn't complete that full transition process. And so she died having been tied to her human body. Well, excuse me again. Now, fast forward to Avatar 2, The Way of Water, and just as how Avatar '09 sets up the world, the universe, explaining the rules and so on and so forth, Avatar 2 has explained how throughout the time that has progressed, new discoveries have been made and the rules have gone even deeper. And some of the rules have been changed even a bit as well because despite Grace dying in her human form, in her human body, technically her avatar body, which is, bred through her DNA as well, which contains part of her, was still technically alive. It just didn't have her piloting the body essentially. Well, in Avatar 2, you find out early on that somehow, some way, Grace's avatar is pregnant and it gave birth. It gave essentially, a virgin birth, and it birthed out this child named Kiri, who Jake Sully has adopted into his own family. And Kira is also played by Sigourney Weaver because, you know, it her character came from her original avatar. And so excuse me. And so she's able to interact through Pandora still to some degree because she is technically related to her original birth mother being a human through the avatar body, yet there's never a full explanation as to how she came to be. Again, there's no father figure present. There are rumors throughout the film that it could have been this person, it could have been that person, but there's also the idea that by uh, submitting to the natural law of Pandora, by submitting to the deity on Pandora known as Awa, that somehow in that transfer process that was deemed unsuccessful, the there was still kind of the foundation, the bedrock of life to continue just in a different form. And this is never, again, it's never fully explained. This is just how I'm interpreting the film because Kira, again, you know, is both part human, part Navi, more so Navi, yet with her having a much deeper spiritual connection, it's led to believe that she is able to interact with Pandora on a different level. And this is also represented in the film as well. She literally interacts with the flora and the fauna differently than other characters, so much so that they kind of, you know, coil when they encounter her, not so much in fear, but more so in like confusion as to like, you know, how are you able to, you know, interact with the planet differently when we're all part of the same species or subspecies, so on and so forth. And so Kira represents a really interesting character. So she herself is not full-blooded Navi, nor is she full-blooded human. She's a mix because she was born of an avatar. But then excuse me, I must have something in my throat. Jake Sully, he goes on and he marries his his mate, his wife, Natiri, played by Zoe Saldana, and she is native Navi. They they met on the planet, so she's full-blooded Navi, and they themselves have children as well. And so their children are not full-blooded Navi either. They're considered, half-blooded, half-breeds, and so on and so forth. They're, referred to in those derogatory terms by, the villains of the movie and so on and so forth. And so there's this furthering of literal DNA and how it works in the Avatar world as well, with again full-blooded Na'vi interacting with half-blooded Na'vi, they themselves having children, and how are they represented in the world? Because they tried to interact with other Na'vi on the planet, and they are deemed, impure as demons or having demon blood, and so that's a whole nother layer to it as well. And then you have some humans who were sympathetic to the Navis in the original film as well, who stayed back on Pandora to assist them to abandon their ties to Earth. And so while they themselves aren't able to make the full transition to, Navi via their avatars, not everyone in the movie has an avatar. Not all the humans have avatars. Those that either don't have avatars or they themselves didn't want to fully transfer over. They're just living on Pandora just as humans, and they rely on, breathing apparatuses and so on and so forth. So there's that aspect to it as well. And then you have someone like Quaritch, played by Stephen Lang, the primary antagonist of the first film. He's a full-blooded human. Well, again, spoilers for Avatar 2009. Quaritch dies at the end of the movie. He gets killed. His human body dies. Well, he himself is also reborn in a certain way too, because you find out that, uh, back in Avatar '09, that the humans, that the humanity's military has been able to make copies of people's consciousness and DNAs and genomes and all that, and so they themselves are able to upload essentially people's brains into new bodies. And so Quaritch, Stephen Lang, he comes back also as an avatar, yet he himself is still Stephen Lang. He's continuing the human campaign now just outside of a human body, and instead he's inside of an avatar body, which I also find that to be really interesting as well, because Quaritch in the first movie, he's your typical GI Joe soldier. He's got the flat top, huge muscles, tattooed up, gun toting. He's he's like, I don't take orders from anyone except myself. Do you get me? He's that kind of guy. He's a professional government issued, jackwagon. He's a great character, but that's just how he is. He's just fresh off the assembly line, you know. And so for him to come back in Avatar 2 and to be in a Navi body, for him to be in an alien body, yet to still be embraced by the humans, and for him to continue to say, like, down with the Navi, down with Pandora, we got to conquer it all. It's like, well, like, do you, how does your, how do your literal ethical and moral ties to humanity still exist? Because in the first film, it's a quasi extinction campaign, to where they're like, look, we're going to try to interact with the Navi in a somewhat diplomatic and peaceful way. Hence why we have avatars at all to begin with, to kind of bridge the gap between the species. But the humans clearly state, however, if they're unwilling to give us space and give us land and learn of our human ways, we're going to literally bulldoze them. We're going to push them out of their way, or out of our way. We're going to take their resources, and by golly, if some get in the way and they happen to die, so be it. That's just it's just the mentality of the humans in the Avatar world. And so for Quaritch to come back, and he and his fellow Marines as well, for them to come back inside inside Avatar bodies, and to be like, ugh, you know, I guess I'm back, but whatever. Anyway, down with the Navi, am I right? And it's like, well, it's like, if you think about it, Mister Colonel, Mister Gun Toting guy, you know, you're you're not going to be able to, like, exist like alongside your original species, because at the end of the day, you know, even if you win, if you're the last Navi standing, like, how are you going to coexist with with your humans. How are you going to be a part of their new world when their campaign is driven by, this is our planet now, we're going to take it over, hear us roar. So it's interesting that the hatred and the vitriol that Korich and his fellow soldiers have for the Na'vi and for Pandora, they still exist despite them literally being saved via Na'vi blood, via Na'vi ways. And throughout the second film, they're also going through the paces of Na'vi as well, because they have to realizing now that they pretty much exclusively exist on Pandora in the same capacity that the Na'vi do. They learn the tricks of the trade. They learn about wildlife and how to communicate and how to speak the native language. Yet still they're 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 still you know they're humans inside of avatar bodies. Yet they, even though that there's no separation now, they're fully locked into their avatar bodies. Because they wouldn't be able to live otherwise. they still they still are with humans, and at no point does Korich or any of his soldiers stop and think, hey, look, like, we're not human anymore. Literally, we're not human. What does that mean for our mission objective? They're like, nope. It's like, we carry on. The body is just a vessel. It might as well be another suit of armor. Carry on. So it's, from a literal character development perspective and how deep they take the world, it's really, really interesting. But then you get into the actual film itself, and in the first Avatar movie dealt with the forest dwelling Na'vi, and this one now you deal with the ocean based Na'vi, who are similar yet different. Whereas the forest Na'vi have you know 2 arms, 2 legs, and a tail. For example, the ocean Na'vi have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a rear fin. Their tail is a fin. So they're more water focused. Their skin is a different color. And the way that their culture develops around the ocean and its various ecosystems, you know, that interacts, or that dictates how they interact with Pandora as well. So that's, you're learning more about the literal different species on Pandora as well, the different subcultures of Navi and their co-ascending tribes. And so that's really interesting as well. It's just expanding the world in a different way to that too. And then of course, just as how Jake Sully had to learn how to be a Navi in the first Avatar, well, now he and his family have to learn not only how to be just Navi, they have to learn how to be water Navi as well, how to be ocean focused Navi. And so that's really interesting and fun as well. And then you get a deeper look into how how nature connects everything together, because they're able to communicate with ocean life in the same way that the forest Navi communicate with the literal trees, the animals there as well. And so you're on a deeper level interacting with you know whales and these kind of shark looking type things. And so you're developing a deeper spiritual connection to the world of Pandora as well, both the characters and you as the audience. And so just as how you grew attached to Jake Sully and his counterparts in the first movie, you're growing attached to the new characters in the second movie and their counterparts as well. And some of them literally are you know um, excuse me, some of them literally are uh, parts of the animal ecosystems on Pandora. You do interact with, alien space whales quite a bit in this second movie, and so when you develop a connection to them, and spoiler, you see them get killed, get tortured. It hits you hard, and like, I'm not gonna lie, like, you know when they show the humans killing the whales in a very earth-based way, because we ourselves on earth here in real life, we also whale hunt for their blubber and their fat and their other, you know, nutrients, whatever their bodies give, for us that we deem useful, and And here on Earth, while there may be legitimate purposes for us to hunt and harvest whales, we of course do it to excess because we're, you know, led by greed and gluttony. And so Avatar 2 adopts that completely, where the humans that return to Pandora, as they try to capture and hunt whales, the space whales, for their own purposes as well, they do it in excess, they do it in barbaric ways. And so when you see that happen in the movie, it it hits you, and I got a little misty eyed. I'm not gonna lie, I got a little misty eyed watching this alien whale get tortured to death because, you know, again, not only did you just learn about how valuable they are to Pandora and to their Navi counterparts, but again, it is a reflection of real world tendencies as well, and it puts it on full display, and so that's it's it's as important as it is entertaining as well, and then of course with I haven't talked about this at all though, but like, Avatar '09 was and still remains, a visual technical marvel. It's an achievement in cinema. The motion capture systems that they used in Avatar '09 truly changed cinematic technology. Well, James Cameron and co. with Avatar 2: The Way of Water, they said, okay, great. We're going to take everything we know and learned through the making of the first Avatar film. Now, what if we applied all our techniques, all our methods to underwater capture, to underwater motion capture? Can we film Avatar underwater, in water, around water? How do we make that work? And by golly, they did. And I don't fully understand it. It sounds like they had blank checks and that they were literally inventing technology for this movie to get made. And it's just it's just as jaw dropping, if not more jaw dropping than the first one, because again, much as how Avatar '09 laid a groundwork and a foundation for this world that tells stories, Avatar '09 laid a foundation for future installments to build upon in a visual spectacle sense as well. Like Avatar: The Way of Water, without me having seen Avatar 3, but like Avatar 2 might literally be the most visually stunning movie I've like ever seen. Like it might be the most like proficient in terms of like computer generated worlds and characters. Like when you watch Avatar 2, you are looking at essentially photo real aliens. Photo real aliens in terms of Navi, in terms of the sea creatures, the land creatures, photo real in terms of the world around them. I mean, the the level of detail and color and texture to everything, you feel like you could reach out and touch it. You feel like you could live on Pandora. You feel like you could swim in the oceans of Pandora. I mean, they like, oh man, just Avatar 2 just takes everything that the first film did and just perfects it, in my opinion. But that being said, as despite all that, I still consider Avatar '09 to be my personal favorite of the two thus far. And I do think it is overall kind of a better movie because I think Avatar 2 can get a little, it can stretch the taffy a little too much, in my opinion. Like I said, when it comes to examining, species and how they interact with each other, you can get a little lost in the weeds, and it can kind of, you know, it can be confusing if you're not fully invested. But like I said, when you watch Avatar 1 from the first 10 minutes you're in, when you watch Avatar 2 from the first 10 minutes you're in, it's just they do a lot more with the story that it can be a little overwhelming. And again, that's because also the film is like literally like a half hour longer as opposed to its original counterpart. But like James Cameron, I mean, not only does the film look great and have amazing characters and a great story, but I mean, like the action is incredible, and like the last act of the movie, the literal last hour of the film, is just nonstop action. I mean, like, you go from you know firearm combat. When your firearms run out of ammunition, you go to knives and hand-to-hand stuff, axes and all that stuff. When your knives and your axes break, then you go to hand-to-hand combat, and all this is being done both on land, on sea, in the air. It's, and also like, there's parts of this final battle where they're fighting on a boat that's taking on water, and so all this action is being done, you know, when the literal environment they're fighting on is sinking. They're, everything around them is a hazard. It very much reminds you of like Indiana Jones, to where like, he'll be fist fighting a dude like as the temple is like crumbling around him, like, you know, it's just, man, you just get sucked in. Like it's like Indiana Jones, it's like Star Wars, to where there's multiple branches to each combat scenario, and just the choreography of it all. I mean, oh my gosh, it is just, it's top notch from a just pure spectacle level, and that's just a part of it. Again, you have to get, you know, you know, combat action sequences without emotion is just visual noise. That's all it is, and like if you have too much action, too much combat, you can get lost in it all. If you don't have enough, your film can feel kind of drawn out and tedious, but you have to have a perfect marriage between the two. You have to have quieter and more character driven scenes to set the table, to deliver the stakes, so that way when the fighting happens, you feel that the characters are literally fighting for themselves, for others, to defend something, so on and so forth. And Avatar 2, again, builds on the spectacle of the first film, because that first film has some incredible combat sequences, and Avatar 2 says, hold my beer. It's it's crazy. I do wish there was more combat overall, though. I think that they could have sprinkled in a few more action focused beats throughout this movie. But again, as I said, no time is wasted, because when you're not actually in a combat scene, you are deepening your connections to everything around you, and so you understand why everything is boiled up to a point of combat and contention as well. And yeah, I think this movie is really really great, and I think the Avatar franchise is just, it's amazing, and it continues to grow in so many different ways. And and yeah, I'm really looking forward to Avatar 3. And I apologize if this is kind of a fragmented type of evaluation of the movie and of the next portion of this franchise here, because as I said, I began this recording at 11:50 p.m. and now it's well past midnight for this segment. But hey, look, my injuries are self-inflicted, and it's okay, because getting to rewatch Avatar 2 was an absolute treat. And if you have not seen the movie in a while, please treat yourself to a rewatch. And if you have not seen Avatar 1 or 2, but yeah, like if you've seen Avatar 1 and you're like, that's it, that's enough, I don't need any more blue people in my life, like, give Avatar 2 a chance, because like it's it's incredible. But yeah, so yeah, that'll do it for this portion of the podcast episode. And then, like I said, I'll also talk about some more behind the scenes stuff that I've watched from this franchise as well, because there's a few making of documentaries that are really remarkable and show, as I mentioned, how the technology was developed and utilized for this process here. And I think it's really worth your while, at least from what I've seen. It really does just show the absolute level of craftsmanship that's on display for these movies. And as I said, this comes from Fox and from Disney. They have blank checks, and you're getting to see how a blank check gets spent. So yeah, it's pretty great. But when I finish some of those documentaries, I will record a segment on that as well, and then I will eventually record a segment for Avatar 3. And then, like I said before, by the time you are listening to this whole thing, will follow concisely. So, yeah, Avatar 1 and 2 are incredible films, and I'm really looking forward to Avatar 3. And yeah, it feels great to return to Pandora. And so, if you have not done so yourself in a while, please treat yourself to that. And I will See you guys in the next segment, and thank you so much for watching and for listening to the Far Out Podcast.
Kids, allow me to interject for a moment with yet another segment of this episode of the Far Out Podcast. At the time of this recording, I just got done watching the newest and latest documentary on the making of the Avatar movies. This one is a two-part documentary on Disney Plus, and this one is titled Fire and Water. And though it almost exclusively has to do with the making of Avatar 2, The Way of Water, it does offer a sneak peek into the making of uh, Avatar 3 and the similar techniques that were also used in that making process as well. So if you're looking forward to Avatar 3, I think that this will also offer just kind of a deeper exploration into what went into making of that movie as well through the context of Avatar 2, and of course they touch on Avatar 1 as well. But yeah, kids, there are some really great documentaries out in existence now on Avatar. I believe that there's at least one that came with every Blu-ray, so you have a dedicated documentary for Avatar from '09. You also have a dedicated documentary for The Way of Water as well, and then you have a bunch of behind the scenes stuff as well that can be just found online and stuff like that. But this is yet another encapsulation of some of the behind the scenes true magic that just goes into making these movies. And as I kind of said off the top here, it really does just it takes your appreciation for these movies to a whole nother level. And that's something how, like, for myself, like, that's how I developed my appreciation of Star Wars, because I would watch the movies over and over and over again because I had them, like, on DVD. Well, eventually, you know, I would know those movies like the back of my hand, and I would, literally, I would want to explore the menu of the disc of the DVD, and I'd be like, huh, what's bonus features, what's special features, and getting to watch those making of documentaries for the Star Wars movies, especially the prequels. I mean, my gosh, that's just like you're just looking at film history, in that context. And the same is absolutely true for the Avatar documentaries, and Fire and Water definitely belongs in that conversation as well. If you're a big fan of the Avatar movies like I am, I really do recommend this. Even if you're not a really big fan, if you've just kind of seen the movies and think, yeah, they're good. This is gonna sound super nerdy, but like I think that at least one of the documentaries should at least be a bit of like mandatory viewing, because like the Avatar movies aren't just other movies. I mean, they truly are monuments to cinema and to the development of new technology. I mean, in this documentary, they talk about how, going between Avatar 1 and 2, how again they wanted to develop new systems to film underwater and how to capture that effectively, and like the technology literally did not exist, and so they have these engineers working in tandem with these film studios who are literally making technology, and they're talking about how it didn't work, and how every time they would try to tweak something that would result in a new problem that required further tweaking. I mean, it's not just putting a camera in a body of water and hitting record. I mean, they break down the granular minutia about the true upheaval process and the R&D department that went into um, the making of these movies, and it really is just tremendous. I mean, if you like to know how things are made, if you like to get under the hood of things, the Avatar movies in particular are just some of the greatest case studies on how to make a movie on such a grand scale. And so, yeah, Avatar, Fire and Water, the latest documentary, once again, can be found on Disney Plus, the Disney Plus. And yeah, it's only made me more excited for Avatar 3. And so the next time I talk with y'all, I will have seen Avatar 3, Avatar Fire and Ash, and then I will share my thoughts in that segment. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Kids, at the time of this recording, it is now almost 10:30 p.m. and I have just seen Avatar 3: Fire and Ash, and I'm very thankful to have not caught the late showing that I was considering going to this evening. This evening being December 18th, Thursday. I caught the advanced screenings because these Avatar movies, they only get longer. So this latest one now it's like three and a quarter. It's like 3:14 with credits and stuff like that. And I was considering going to the 10:30 showing. So at the time that I'm recording this is when I would be approaching the cinema. And I was considering going at that time just to do stuff earlier in the evening. But no, I'm very thankful I was able to catch the showing that I did because this thing is just a massive piece of cinema. But I also want to give a shout out to all the people that I saw in my local theater because as I was leaving my screening of Avatar, there were people literally lining up to get into the same theater, and they just needed the workers at that theater to reset it to clean the chairs and whatnot. So just bravo to all those people who are literally starting a 3 hour plus movie at 10:30 p.m. Y'all are true warriors when it comes to cinema. But let's talk about the actual movie, Avatar: Fire and Ash. As I've said in the previous segments of this podcast episode, I love Avatar. I think that Avatar 1 from '09 is really remarkable, really special. And I think Avatar 2 just builds on that foundation in pretty much every other way. When it comes to visuals, the action, I think it's just tremendous. In my opinion, though, despite me loving how deep the mythology goes in Avatar 2, I can understand how it can be a lot to chew on versus the first movie, and so it can get kind of weighed down by its own sense of scale. And so I still prefer Avatar 1 over Avatar 2, just for, kind of the place that that one holds in my heart. But I mean, if Avatar 1 is like a 10, Avatar 2 is like a 9.5, a 9 at the lowest. So how would I rank Avatar 3? And again, I also have to provide some context for my context, frankly, because I've seen Avatar 1 and 2 literally over 5 times for each movie over the years. And so now I'm talking about Avatar 3 after having seen it for just one viewing and having it fully fresh in my mind. There's not a long digestion period with this movie. But again, I will offer an overview of it, and this will not be a spoiler conversation. It will not be as open as the previous segments on this episode have been. I will give a general overview of my thoughts, and I will perhaps speak in a manner that aligns somewhat with context of the movie. Like if I feel that I need to kind of hit on a point and that kind of provides a framework for a scene, I will say that. But overall, you can consider this portion of this episode to be a non-spoiler discussion of Avatar 3. And so, excuse me, without further ado, what would I give Avatar 3 on a 1 to 10 scale when compared to the other two movies? Ah, I'm gonna say a 7.5, I'd say. Now, for some people that might seem incredibly low, especially when compared to the other two movies, and with that kind of grading scale, you could attribute that to, you know, at best a B minus, at worst a C minus, type stuff. And so, where am I getting that conclusion from? Well, look, let me start off by saying what I did not like about the movie, and then I'll finish on a high note. I'll talk about what I did like, and there are some things that I genuinely did like, but there are things that I genuinely did not like in this movie. Uh, First of all, Avatar 3, Fire and Ash, is not so much Avatar 3 as it is part 2 of Avatar The Way of Water. And you might be thinking, Jim, numbers go 1, 2, 3. What are you talking about? Well, I mean, from a literal story progression, uh, Avatar 3 picks up, in my opinion, almost right after Avatar 2 ends. Which for some people, they might love that sense of continuity, the idea that, just a singular day, if not, even a couple of days has passed between movies. And, in that lack of separation, there can be, you know, it can seem like everything is just running on a continuous track, so on and so forth. But like, with Avatar 1 and 2, with there being so much time in between the literal releases of those movies, there was also time between the stories as well. And so there was this there was the ability, as I've said, the previous two entries, Avatar 1 sets itself, it gives you everything you need inside of the first 10 minutes. Same with Avatar 2. They catch you up to speed inside of the first 10 minutes. With Avatar 3, it doesn't do that. It drops you right back into where the Way of Water ended, and so, for me, I was in the prime position to watch this movie because I had just seen Avatar 1, 2, and 3 over the course of like 3 or 4 days, so I have all this incredibly fresh in my mind. But for those that don't, if you've only ever seen Avatar 2, in theaters, so that would be a literal 3-year gap between movies 2 and 3, you might jump into Avatar 3 and you're like, wait, what happened? Where did we leave off? Who were they talking? I mean, like, they're literally picking up stuff that's like mid conversation. Like they're referring back to previous beats. And like, again, for myself, I was thankful, but like I could easily see people getting lost in translation between Avatar 2 and 3. And if you're not starting on a strong note, it can be kind of difficult to get into the proper gear. And also, you know, like as I said, in the lead up to Avatar 3, uh, as I was watching the trailers, I liked them but did not love them because in my opinion, it really did look like Avatar 2. It looked like kind of the same locales, the same kind of combat, the same kind of story beats, so on and so forth. And Avatar 3, I think, suffers because of that, because there is a lot of familiar stuff in Avatar 3 that we've previously seen, excessively in Avatar 2. And you might be thinking, well, I loved Avatar 2. I just, if I can have more of Avatar 2, then by golly, serve me up. And it's like, well, you might think that, but like, you know, the the combat is kind of the same, kind of the overall trajectory of the plot's kind of the same as well too. I mean, you if you've seen Avatar 1 and 2, you have essentially seen Avatar 3. That's not me saying that this is, a movie worth skipping. I don't think that it is, but like there is you can feel kind of the repetition of beats going on as well. And also too, like one thing, and this might be a somewhat minor spoiler, but again, it does provide context for some stuff that I want to talk about. In Avatar 2, Jake Sully, our main character, he he has two boys. He has two sons. One of them is older, one of them is younger, and he favors the older brother. He's, in his eyes, he's kind of doing everything right. He's the favorite child. Well, when when it comes to the younger son, he can't do anything right. Jake Sully's constantly talking down to him. Just he can't. No matter how hard this kid tries, he just can't seem to achieve the respect and the love of his father, which in my opinion, I think kind of diminishes Jake Sully's character overall. Well, at the end of Avatar 2, there seems to be some kind of reconciliation between the younger brother and his father, that they've been arguing this whole movie, and in the midst of everything that's happened, they come together as a family unit, and so you would think that that would lead them into a stronger connection in Avatar 3. Oh, no. No, 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 no. They in Avatar 3, Jake Sully and his younger son named Loak, I mean, they are still just having coarse words with each other all the time. And so, for me, I again, having just seen Avatar 2, I was thinking like, boy, isn't this resolved? Like, how much more of this father's son dynamic do I have to see played out via argument and accusations? Oh, up the whole thing apparently. Like, it is, it's just relentless between how Jake Sully talks to this kid. Now, some of you might think, well, I want to see that development. I want to see it take place over the course of, you know, the films. It can't just be all wrapped up inside of a couple minutes, but just man, like this kid just can't catch a break. And at some point I just wanted to be like Jake, Mr. Sully, sir, you're not being a good father. Whether this is peacetime or wartime, but this is wartime. Like, can't you kind of bury the hatchet here? But man, they love to cut each other up with their words here. So that was just, I thought that was kind of overdone as well. And with the combat as well, look, James Cameron, the director, the writer, the creator of this whole thing, he excels at the combat. I think it's really tremendous, especially in the final acts. This is when he pulls out all the stops. I will say this though too, despite me having said how great he is when it comes to him filming action sequences and making it feel emotionally, relevant to the story, again, if you've seen Avatar 2, you've essentially seen the combat of Avatar 3. Some of it is aerial based, some of it is ground based, some of it is water based, and you've had various bites of this apple before. There are new things that they do. They show new kills and new combat maneuvers and stuff, but again, even the action sequences can kind of get lost in the familiar. But well, before I get to really my main point with the movie overall as to why I'm not in love with it as opposed to the other two, the another thing that I really found to be kind of an odd choice, or an odd series of choices with Avatar 3 is that I think that this movie is edited really strangely. And this next statement I'm gonna make is gonna sound crazy, but I mean it sincerely. I feel like this movie should have been longer. I really do. Despite Avatar 3 being the longest of the franchise, coming in at 3 hours and I believe 14 minutes with credits. So let's just call it 310. 310 with credits. This movie is edited within an inch of its life. I mean, the long scenes feel short and the short scenes feel long. Like it's just nuts, and we're going constantly between locales and conversations and character beats. I mean, it feels like we're not getting much time to breathe on things. And then the things that James Cameron and co decide to let breathe, it's like, can we get to things that, in my opinion, are more interesting? There's not essentially wasted time in this movie. I'm just saying, I wish some things could have been prioritized differently. Again, it's not wasted though. It all looks and sounds incredible, and it all serves the story. But it's like, man, like they set things up in Avatar 3 that I would really like to have been explored deeper, and they just kind of just drop them, and they go and they focus on other things as well. And also too, like when it comes to Avatar 3, like there are there are also questions I have about the editing that have to do with like literal character, like motives and stuff as well, cuz like there's so many pieces of stuff where it just seems like there's some back-ended like hypocrisy. Like I don't really know how to fully explain it, but with Jake Sully and his son Loak, in Avatar 2, they are bickering, then they make up at the end. Then in Avatar 3, they're bickering, so on and so forth, and then in Avatar 3 you have, you know, you have a I don't know, Neytiri, freaking out over one thing. But then in the next scene, she's perfectly fine, or you have Jake and Neytiri having a heartfelt conversation where they leave mad at each other. Then in the next scene, you have them reconciling with one another. I mean, there are beats in this movie that, again, they they plant one thing and then switch it up with another thing, where it's like the individual scenes I feel don't always have a proper resolution. And again, it despite this thing being, again, over 3 hours long, I wish it was longer so we could let things play out literally for a longer amount of time, because it feels a little disjointed in that area. I wish the editing could have been cleaned up, but I'm sorry that maybe that point wasn't as clear as it could have been. In my defense, it is well past 10:30 now, and again, I've only seen the film once, but yeah, just in kind of the conclusion of that point, I wish that the shorter scenes would have been longer, and some of the longer scenes would have been shorter, in my opinion. Let me. Oh yeah, this is the big point I wanted to make when it comes to the stuff that I did not like. So in Avatar 3, well, in Avatar 1 you have the forest people, you have the forest Navi. In Avatar 2 you have the ocean Navi. And now in Avatar 3 you have the fire Navi, the volcano mountain based Navi, and this is where we get the title from, Fire and Ash, because the fire Navi, literally, their trait that makes them unique is that they have an affinity for fire and manipulation of fire, and they're aggressive and so on and so forth. Um, they succeeded in making these new people, this antagonistic clan, aggressive, because them as the enemy, and I don't remember their exact name, so I'll call them the Fire Nation. Shout out to the other Avatar franchise with the Four Elements as well. Great franchise, but um, the Fire Nation Navi in Avatar 3 are really unsettling.
And I'm not talking like they made like good villains, like, oh yeah, you love to see these guys just get their comeuppance, they look so cool and creepy. No, like I was watching Avatar 3, and whenever we were focusing on the fire people, I was like, this is really dark. Like this makes me feel kind of icky. Like the way that they're portrayed is just savagely. I mean, they are just, they're aggressive and their attacks are just in your face and they're abusive and so on and so forth and like, you know, they talk about how they're unhinged as a clan of people, and so they have tendencies and practices that make them seem barbaric in contrast to the other Navi people. And for some people, they might think like, well, they have to do that to make them a great villain. Like you want them to be scary, and they are scary. But I'm just saying like the Avatar movies, in my opinion, they are not only about family, but they are made for families to enjoy. Hence why they're as successful as they are, having made billions of dollars in profit. Avatar 3, this one feels the least like a family film. Like, I was watching this movie and I was thinking, I don't know if my mom would like this. I don't know if a family of four, a mother, a father, and a couple of kids. I don't know how they would feel about Avatar 3. There are some intense scenes, and the way that they portray the Fire Navi as being this just unhinged society on Pandora, um, visually it's cool, I guess, but it's also just kind of icky. And yeah, it just made me feel uncomfortable at times. I think they took them a bit too far in in this movie. I wish they would have pulled back more and literally made the movie more of just kind of an overall family event. Because yeah, this is a dark movie with some kind of really unsettling imagery. So much so that if slash when I decide to see the film again, and I'm pretty sure I will, which, that in of itself is kind of a torpedo towards it because, like, Avatar 2, I saw 4 times in theaters. I love that movie. I wanted to go back again and again and again. Avatar 3, having left the theater now, like less than an hour ago, I'm not feeling overwhelmed to go back again for everything I've said. There are similar beats in Avatar 3 that we've seen in Avatar 1 and 2, and also the villain is just really, really creepy, And so while the first movie and the second one are all about the adventure and the majesty of Pandora, this one is the exact opposite. And for for viewers who have been with this franchise for a long time, like myself, they might appreciate and welcome a change of pace and a change of tone. But for myself, it's a heel change that's going to be hard to swallow for some people. And yeah, I don't know how this one's going to do. The first two films have made $2 billion each, billion with an alien, but I could easily see Avatar 3 falling below 2 billion. That by no means will That's not going to make it a failure. If this thing makes $1.5 billion worth of money, I mean, good lord, that's one of the most successful movies ever released in the medium. I'm just saying, I feel that the bar to entry for this movie and the bar to re-entry on this movie is higher now because of the literal tone of the movie, given to us by the Fire Nation. So yeah, they were pretty creepy as well. But now let's get into the positives. What did I like about this movie? And there are several things that I like. This will sound somewhat like a contradiction, but I mean this sincerely. While the repetition factor of Avatar 1 and 2 is apparent, the beats that they do go back on for Avatar 3, you appreciate them because Avatar 1 and 2 did them so gosh darn well that getting to revisit beats and seem similar-ish action and have similar music cues, it still hits. You do wish that there would be kind of more new stuff in this as well, but they are replaying the hits in Avatar 3, and so there is still something to appreciate about that. Again, no time is wasted in this movie. Also, not for nothing, but like our our characters, our heroes in this movie, the Sully family, they take a beating. This movie presents itself to you as, no one is ever really truly safe. Our heroes can get injured, they can lose, they can fail, so on and so forth. There is no
in my opinion, Avatar 3 stripped away what people call plot armor, to where, like, depending on if they're a main character or not, clearly they won't die. Clearly they won't lose. Clearly they'll come back again. Well, in Avatar 3, there are several scenes that present itself as, like, you better duck and cover and hope that that arrow misses, because, like, you might get killed too. Who knows? And so, like, yeah, there are some combat scenarios where I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, are they really gonna do this? Are they really gonna do that? Like, it's it doesn't pull punches, and so there is a great amount of stake in this movie. They kind of raise the overall, I don't know, it feels more real, knowing that our heroes could be in legitimate peril as well. Also, speaking of things feeling real, Avatar 3 is a visual marvel. Again, you feel like you could reach out and touch it. It's freaking crazy. The water looks great. The aerial shots look great. The fire looks great. I mean, this once again, this is a movie made with a blank check, and you're getting to see a blank check get spent. So that's just phenomenal as well. Also, I really appreciate on individual character levels. I really appreciated Natiri, played by Zoe Saldana. She who is a full blooded native of Pandora. She's a full-blooded Navi. Um, in this movie, you are getting to explore what prejudice looks like through her eyes. And she is a all-protective mother. She's a fierce warrior. She doesn't take any guff from anyone, and she's a really great character for that. However, in Avatar 1 and 2, her people are getting decimated left and right. Her home is getting eviscerated left and right. She's losing her culture left and right. And in Avatar 3, she's had it. She's saying, like, I hate humans. They call them sky people in this movie because they come from space. She's like, I hate them. I want to see them die. And she also calls them pink skins. She's like, pink skins don't deserve to live. Like, if I have to kill as many of them as I have to protect my family, by golly, I will. And it takes it to a level to where Jake in this movie is talking about how Neytiri's being consumed by hatred, that this is affecting her on a much more personal level. And she's like, I do hate them. I hate humans. I hate the sky people. And Jake looks at her, and he's like, I'm a former human. I'm a former sky person. I was born on Earth. Our children have, they're not fully blooded Navi. They have my blood. They have my avatar blood. They have the blood of humans in them to a certain degree. Do you hate them? Like, do you hate that portion of them? And Nitiri literally says, like, yeah, like, it's hard to love my kids sometimes knowing that they have tainted blood, that they're half-bloods, they're half-breeds. It's shocking the amount of depth that this movie goes into on that scale. And that's what Avatar 1, or excuse me, that's what Avatar 2 did so well, is that it took the mythology of Avatar 1 and dove in deeper, and it made you respect everything more about the movie and its foundation. Avatar 3 does that as well. It takes everything to the next level. And so, from that perspective, it's really tremendous as well. And I apologize if that's kind of minor spoiler-ish stuff, but that's again, I'm just providing context as well, that they continue deeper into the mythology of the species and the cultures and how they interact with one another on Pandora. Also, as well, Pandora as a planet is further explored. The spiritual significance of Awa, of their deity, is explored too in a really cool way as well. I really appreciate that. In tandem with that, you also have Kira, played by Sigourney Weaver, and she's becoming my favorite character of the franchise, honestly, because she herself is the conduit between, Awa and a physical form, so to speak. She has a really deep spiritual connection, and this is a legit bona fide spoiler for Avatar 3. So if you don't want to know this factoid from the movie, mute it, skip ahead, so on and so forth. But so you have been warned. Okay, 3, 2, 1. This is now a spoiler for Avatar 3. In Avatar 3, they confirm what had been my suspicion about Kira, and that she was born from her former avatar, Grace, who was the original body for Sigourney Weaver. Well, you have the human Sigourney Weaver, then you have the avatar body Sigourney Weaver, which again, at the end of Avatar 1, they try to meld the bodies together, does not work. So Sigourney Weaver dies. yet her avatar remains. And then in Avatar 2, you find out that her avatar has been impregnated, seemingly of a virgin, you know, from a virgin birth, and or no, excuse me, that she's been impregnated, but then Kira has been born via a virgin birth, you know, and so that was the rumor in uh, set forth in Avatar 2 that Kira was born essentially without a father, and in Avatar 3 this is confirmed. They outright say that yes, there was no father. Your your mother's avatar got impregnated. There was a seed of life placed during the attempted conscious transfer in the first Avatar film. They reference back to that exact point. And so they talk about how Kira is really truly a product of Awa, of the deity directly, and how that's impacting her overall connection to the planet. And it's a that was a really interesting factoid for the movie as well. And so just for Kira to develop in that way as a character, to have her really lean into the spiritual aspects of herself and of her faith and of the planet overall, I thought was a real strength of the movie as well. And also, full disclosure, I did not like the character very much named Spider in Avatar 2. Spider is the human. He's a native Earthborn human who has been adopted by the Na'vi, and he lives on Pandora via a breathing apparatus. Because he doesn't have an avatar. He's just a human on an alien world. I was not a fan of him initially in Avatar 2. He grew on me throughout Avatar 2, and he grew on me even more in Avatar 3. I think he is a legitimately great character, and I love the fact that him and uh, Kira develop as well, both independently and when they're together as characters. And so getting to see them heighten each other and build each other up was really great. And I'm really liking both of them as characters. But yeah, Kira and Spider are really becoming my favorites, I think, of the franchise. Maybe even more so than Jake and Natiri, but that remains to be seen as well. But yeah, Avatar 3, I think it is a good movie. In my opinion, it's not great, but it is good. And of the Avatar movies, it is the weakest of the three thus far. But again, I want to reaffirm this. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's not. I still enjoyed myself. It's just there's a lot to digest with this thing. And again, some of the stuff that you have to digest is frankly, you know, familiar-ish stuff that you've already seen before, just has a different coat of paint on it. So there is a bit of that that's a little annoying. But again, this thing is still an amazing piece of filmmaking. It looks great, sounds great, the action is great, the characters are great, the world is great. I just wish that the story itself could have been a little more concise, and I wish that it could have. I think it would have thrived not only from again being perhaps longer to let things breathe more, but also just that I think that if they slowed down the editing of this movie and let scenes kind of play out more, I think that would have helped the movie out as well. But yeah, Avatar 3, very happy that I saw it, and I will probably end up seeing it again at some point. But yeah, the next chapter of Avatar, the next chapter of the Avatar saga, shepherded by James Cameron, is here. It is in cinemas now at the time of this recording, and yeah, it is yet another incredible step forward in this great franchise, and I'm very happy to be along for the ride. And likewise, I'm glad that you, yes, you, the listener to this podcast, that you are along for this ride for the Far Out podcast. And so, yeah, thank you so much for watching and for listening. And I hope that you've enjoyed my commentary on Avatar 1, 2, and 3, as well as a behind the scenes documentary. And if you have not seen Avatar before, I recommend that you check out the films, and I recommend that you also check out some of the docs as well. And then even if you have seen the movies before, treat yourself to a rewatch, and then go check out Avatar 3. And if you have seen Avatar 3 or any of the Avatar movies, if you've seen any portion of the Avatar franchise at all, comment your thoughts down below. And yes, well, until next time, the
the Far Out host of the Far Out podcast, and you have been the Far Out audience. And yeah, I guess I'll see you on Pandora. All right. Peace.